What are risk response strategies?
Risk response strategies are the approaches we can make to dealing with the risks we have identified and quantified. In the section on risk quantification, we discussed evaluating the risk in terms of its impact and probability in such a way that we would be able to rank risks in their order of importance. This is what we called severity, the combination of impact and probability. Risk response strategy is really based on risk tolerance, which has been discussed. Risk tolerance in terms of severity is the point above which a risk is not acceptable and below which the risk is acceptable. Several strategies are available for dealing with risks. These are avoidance, acceptance, transfer, and mitigation. See Figure 8.14. Tell me more. There are many reasons for selecting one risk strategy over another, and all of these factors must be considered. Cost and schedule are the most likely reasons for a given risk to have a high severity. Other factors may affect our choice of risk strategy. For example, if a schedule risk is identified for a task in the project, and if this task has many other tasks depending on it, its severity may be calculated as being lower than is apparent, and the severity should be adjusted even though the schedule impact due to the disruption may be difficult to judge. The strategy should be appropriate for the risk it is intended for. The following 4 strategies comprise the strategies that are normally used for risk. 1. Acceptance. Acceptance of a risk means that the severity of the risk is low enough that we will do nothing about the risk unless it occurs. Figure 8.14, Risk Strategy. Using the acceptance strategy means that the severity of the risk is lower than our risk tolerance level. If this were not the case, it would not make sense to accept the risk. Once the risk occurs, we will fix the problem and move on. The risk is acceptable because the severity of the risk is lower than our risk tolerance. Accepting a risk does not mean that we will not do something about the risk when and if it occurs, it means that we will do something about it only if it occurs. Many of the project risks will fall into this category. It is the category where the many insignificant risks are put. Many of these risks cost less to fix when they occur than it would cost to investigate and plan for them. There are 2 kinds of acceptance, active and passive. Acceptance is active when a risk is identified as being acceptable but we decide to make a plan for what to do when and if the risk occurs. It is much more effective to have a plan in place when these types of risk occur rather than trying to deal with the risk when there is little time and lots of hysterics. There is also another risk involved. The wrong thing can be done to solve the problem because its solution was not clearly thought out under pressure in the heat of the moment. Acceptance is passive when nothing at all is done to plan for the risk occurrence. Many of the identified risks in the project will be passively accepted. These risks are simply too small to be of concern. The cost of developing a plan and documenting it can be higher than the cost of dealing with the risk without preparation. An example of risk acceptance is the risk that off-the-shelf software that was purchased for the project will be defective. There is a probability of 2% that this will occur. That is, that the CD the software is delivered on will not work and will have to be replaced with a new CD. This causes a delay of 5 days to a task that has 25 days of free float. Passive acceptance will probably be used in dealing with this risk. It is probably not worth the effort to anticipate the problem and do something about it. It is simpler to wait and see if something is wrong with the CD and take corrective action. Of course, it would be foolish to receive the CD and not test it until it was needed. 2. Transfer. The transfer strategy in managing risk is to give responsibility for the risk to someone outside the project. The risk does not go away, the responsibility of the risk is simply given to someone else. This can be done a number of ways. One way is to negotiate the refusal of a project deliverable that has a high risk of causing problems and have that risk contracted to another project. The stakeholder simply agrees that the deliverable is not required as part of the project and finds another project that is willing to do it. Risks can also be transferred to a contractor working for the project. If this is done with a firm fixed-price contract, the vendor will be obligated to deliver the agreed product for a fixed price. In this situation, the vendor is responsible for any risks that occur while trying to complete the contract. While this may seem like a good solution to risk management problems, the vendors were not born yesterday afternoon. The vendor's risk strategy may be to increase the selling price to compensate for the risk if it occurs. Of course, if the risk does not occur, the vendor will make extra money. If you try to transfer the risk in this way, it may be that you will find that you are paying for the impact of the risk whether it happens or not.